So again, I think by the end of 2022 to early 2023, we're probably talking about a recession here.
Welcome to another video on the Daily Crypto. Once again, we have the famous technical analyst here with us, Gareth Soloway. Make sure to stick around until the end because he is going to drop some knowledge bombs about his trading plan. You don't want to miss out on this. He reveals some very high probability setups. Let's continue with the video.
Yeah, so there's some really interesting stuff going on. We've seen the commodities just get absolutely annihilated. And again, part of this is the massive move up in the dollar that has taken hold over the last, really, since the beginning of the year. But it seems like the floodgates were holding for a lot of commodities like oil and gold and silver. They weren't really collapsing early in the year when the dollar was pushing up. But this last push seems to be like the straw that broke the camel's back, and we've seen massive declines, and we're seeing copper just crashing down. So it's been amazing, but there are opportunities. These are the types of markets when you see these kind of crazy drops that you have to start getting interested as a trader. So that's where I am. To be honest, I was inching into some GDX today, which is the gold miners. I was playing around with a little SLV silver down in these ranges, and again, we can look at some charts like that and take a look for sure.
The recent policies introduced by the Fed have strengthened the dollar, and it has been on a continuous rally since the beginning of 2022. Commodities and the dollar have an inverse relationship, which is why we are seeing massive drops in copper and silver as the dollar continues to go up.
You know, when you've seen this drop in copper and gold, it's a combination. Gold is more just kind of that fear trade, that dollar strength, but copper, there's definitely a component where you have this feeling that, okay, we're now seeing the Fed continue to tighten. We're going to see a recession, maybe a global recession, and then copper is coming down. One thing I want to show you here, let me see if I can show you guys my charts, but you know, it's almost as if the chart kind of predicted what was going to happen here. Because if you look at the trend line, and this is going back to 2006 on copper. So 2006, here was your high in 2011, and look what we were just bubbling up against in 2022 here, and then look at the collapse on copper. Now, One of the things, you know, so copper's been one of my favorite trades here because there is just so much support down here. Look at all this support. So as a technician, look at this area here, and right over here. You should see a big bounce in copper here. I have short-term upside, maybe back to about $4 on copper.
Even though gold and copper have been going down because of the strengthening of the US dollar, the fear of recession has played a big role too. As Gareth shows us on his chart, copper was trading in a channel and got rejected after touching the upper trend line. He is looking for confirmation because copper is sitting at a very strong support level, and we might see a big bounce from here.
The charts are always going to be king, right? We heard about China, you know, the lockdowns and everything going on like that. And then we also heard that they started to loosen their policies and starting to open up a little bit. And that's actually where oil in the last couple of weeks topped out and started to roll over. It was almost like a sell the news event where price was going up in anticipation of the reopening. But once the reopening occurred, everyone said, okay, it's done now, they're reopening, now let's sell oil. And I think we have to keep in mind is that yes, China is a monstrous economy, but if Europe is sliding into a bad recession like it's looking like, and we've seen the euro just get crushed against the dollar, and if we're seeing the US potentially head towards recession, then that chances are that's going to have an impact on China, right? So think about how many goods are bought from China and are shipped overseas to Europe, the US, various parts of the world, and then that likely will slow down China as well. So if you extrapolate it out, it's very possible that regardless of the reopening, oil demand is still going to go down if we're slipping into a global recession.
China had the most restrictive policies to counter COVID, which caused their economy to basically shut down for a long time. Now that things are looking better, China is slowly reopening and the economy has started to improve. But Gareth believes that if Europe and the US go into a recession, chances are China will be affected adversely too.
If we bring up the chart of the US dollar, number one, the first thing that jumps out at me is just the incredible move that it's been under. And this is the weekly chart. So each candle that you're seeing is 1 week. So the low was put in right here in May of 2021. And we've gone almost straight up since then. And one of the things that I'm starting to note is saying, okay, well, where could be that high? I mean, where is the dollar going to top out? And what you want to do is you want to start looking for different trend lines. So right off the bat, I zoom out on my chart. Okay, well, we had a down sloping trend line, and I'm doing this real time, right? So Here was your down sloping trend line. We broke above it. We then consolidated, and now you're seeing a breakout. What I would start to say is start looking at like this area here, which look at what we hit today, right? So you take a previous pivot high, notice how it hits here, and each time it's pulling back. You can even argue that this middle one right here, it also pulled back. So what this tells me as a chart technician is that this line is significant because again, here it hit and pulled back. Here it kissed it and pulled back. Here it pierced it and pulled back. Well, guess what? We're back into that. So you can extrapolate out that in theory, we should see a pullback in the dollar here as well.
According to Gareth, the charts indicate that the dollar is very likely to see some sort of correction as it approaches resistance. If this happens, it will add more confluence to his prediction of copper and gold bouncing from their current points.
So this is one of my cases for being in GDX right now, where I'm thinking that, okay, if the dollar is going to pull back, then GDX, the gold miners, should benefit from that. Gold should benefit from that. And if we go to the gold miners chart, here, look at this little support area right here. So we're basically kissing this extreme oversold condition for a little bit of a bounce. And please understand, folks, is that, you know, for the most part, I'm looking at 2 to 4 weeks out, right? I'm not looking at 6 months, 2 years, 10 years out. This is more shorter term, taking advantage of price action to your advantage.
As he explains on his chart, if the dollar retraces, then gold and gold miners will benefit from it. Gareth also mentions that this idea isn't for the long term and should be utilized for a small swing setup.
Now, again, my early career was trading through the dot-coms. That was when I first started. And the dot-com similarity, and this is why bubbles are very similar, is because we as humans are trading, right? And we are ruled by the same emotions. So in every bubble, there's max greed. Everyone thinks it's so easy. Oh, you can throw that dart at that board and just make so much money. That's a bubble. You know, everyone's making money. The problem is bubbles collapse. And in the dot-com era, we saw a ton of dot-coms go out of business, and we saw many get bought out for pennies on the dollar. Well, we're just starting to see that in crypto, right? I think Voyager filed for bankruptcy. Celsius is having issues. We saw the Terra Luna collapse. So you're starting to see that, but you haven't achieved that wipeout where you're going to see, let's say, 90% of all cryptocurrencies go to zero. And they think that's what has to happen. If you look at the dot-com bubble, when we emerged out of that, you basically had a handful of dot-coms. You had Amazon, you had a few other ones out there that survived. Everything else either got bought out or essentially went to zero and went into bankruptcy. So I think we're due for a cryptocurrency bounce here. I think we'll get up to about 25,000, maybe 28. But I do think you have more downside in crypto, at least to 12. We need to see people just being like, oh my goodness, crypto's done. When people like literally give up, I mean, this happened in 2018 as well, after the 2017 high. There was like this, no one wanted to talk about crypto. It was like Fight Club. You just didn't talk about it, right? Yeah. And that was the key when the bottom was in. We haven't gotten to that point yet in crypto.
Staying true to his assertions, he is still looking for a massive drop in the crypto markets. To be honest, it is very necessary if we want to see healthy, sustainable growth in this space. Gareth mentions that 90% of cryptocurrencies will be wiped out and go to zero, which is really important as we have tens of thousands of crypto tokens that don't provide any real value.
I think the Fed is just like they always do. They're late to the party. And when they're late to the party, they overcompensate. So they're the person that comes in late and they have to make that big scene and jump up and down so everyone notices them at the party. And you know, not to make light of it because it's obviously affecting the economy, but that's what they're doing. They're overcompensating. They did this in 2009 when we saw the collapse. They came out with gangbusters and printed tons of money. Now we're seeing it again on the opposite side where inflation finally reared its ugly head. And now they're trying to play catch up. And the problem with catch up is that they're going to go too far and they're going to push us into recession. So again, I think by the end of 2022 to early 2023, we're probably talking about a recession here.
There is no doubt that a recession is very near. With the Fed's policies and inflation at historic highs, Gareth believes we could be in a recession by the end of 2022 or early 2023.
The main thing right now, and this is what I have currently, which I'm in the long term, I have 5% of my net worth in gold. And usually most of it's physical gold, to be honest. And again, I look at that like insurance, where if I woke up tomorrow and the grid was down, the banks were closed, I couldn't get money out of an ATM, well, at least I got some gold, right? And I think that's important to think about, where it's kind of your insurance policy against all-out collapse of the system. Having said that, I also hold for the next multiple years other investments in silver, as well as other metals. Platinum's down here, starting to accumulate some platinum. Some of these metals where I believe that inflation is going to be higher than 2% for the longer term, I think that's really going to be beneficial. So those are my main ones. I do plan on picking up Bitcoin. And in fact, in all fairness, at 19,000, I started my beginning hodl position, to use that term, where I basically allocated a percentage of my net worth, same thing, for Bitcoin, and I bought 1/6 of what I want to accumulate at 19, and then basically every 2,000-3,000 lower, I'll buy another 1/6, so up to 5 additional entries. That's dollar cost averaging, safest thing to do. Doesn't guarantee a winning trade, but at least I'm not guessing at a particular low and staking the whole entire amount on that low.
To stay safe from any disasters the future might have in store, Gareth reveals that he has 5% of his net worth in gold, silver, and platinum. He has also started to accumulate Bitcoin from the $19,000 level and is building a long-term position. He says the best approach is to dollar cost average because no one can know for sure exactly where the bottom is. Going all in at a certain level means there is no guarantee the price will rise from there, and if it went against him, he would be in a lot of pain. Do you think we are going to be in a recession by the end of 2022? What measures are you taking to stay safe? Let us know in the comments below. Like this video and subscribe to our channel to stay updated with the latest news and events.